Ever feel like the harder you search for your purpose, the more lost you feel? Like you're chasing this thing, this big, life-defining answer that you're supposed to have. But the more you chase it, the more hollow the pursuit feels. You're not lost. You're asking a much deeper question, one the world never taught you how to answer. That's a conversation I've had with clients over the years as a therapist and a coach, and as someone who's wrestled with this myself. You'll hear a bit of my story as we move through this 4-part series about the paradox of purpose. But for now, let's focus on you. So this episode is not going to give you a 5-step plan to figure out your purpose. If that's what you came here for, I'm sorry to disappoint. But that's not what's going to happen here. Because the kind of clarity that you're longing for doesn't just live in your to-do list. It lives in your remembering. And that's going to make a little bit more sense because that sounds a little bit esoteric, but it's going to make a bit more sense as we continue this journey together. So you've probably done all of the things, the journaling, the vision boards, the personality tests. I definitely have done those. You probably gathered a lot of information, but maybe not integration. And we'll get to that towards the end of our series. But if you're still searching, you're not failing at life because you still haven't figured this out yet. It's just a sign that you're not meant to settle for surface answers. You're not here to figure life out like some sort of puzzle. You're here to remember, to recollect the parts of yourself that maybe you've exiled, trying to be who you were told to be. And when you start listening to what's beneath the noise, not what's urgent, not what's sort of enduring, you begin to move differently, not from pressure, but from presence. Because real purpose doesn't just show up like a lightning bolt. It shows up as a quiet pull, a pattern that just keeps circling back into your life. It's almost like a hum beneath the chaos that says, yo, this matters. And you feel it in your body before you even can explain it, before you can find the words to explain what you're actually feeling. And that kind of knowing, it doesn't come from trying harder. It comes from unlearning, from clearing out everything that was layered on top of your truth. All the stories, the timelines, the pressure to prove something. So if you're feeling confused right now, stay with me. That confusion is sacred. It means you're not bypassing this. You're actually in it. And in this series, we're not forcing clarity. We're creating space for it to find you. So maybe it's not about doing more. Maybe it's about finally being in a way that lets the truth rise on its own. Most people treat purpose like a problem to solve. It's the first misconception. It's like some cosmic riddle with a perfect answer. So if you just try hard enough, get the right journal, make a plan, follow the blueprint, and that idea, it's exhausting. It really is. Because it keeps you focused on what you haven't figured out instead of honoring the quiet intelligence of where you already are. Maybe you've spent hours scripting out your dream life, building timelines, setting goals, hoping that if you just mapped it out perfectly, the meaning would just show up. But instead of clarity, you ended up with more pressure, more urgency, more shame for still not knowing. But what if not knowing is just as sacred? What if uncertainty isn't a problem to fix, but a doorway to something you're finally ready to feel? So let's go a little bit deeper, because y'all know I like to go deep, because without depth, there is no transformation. But underneath all the chasing, the overthinking, the pressure to figure it all out, there's actually something else going on. Most of us were taught to treat purpose like a goal. Like if we work hard enough, think hard enough, do enough, we'll finally land on the answer. But that approach misses something very important, because purpose isn't something that you force. It's something that begins to show up when your life is aligned with what truly matters to you. You've been told that meaning is something that you go out and get, that it lives somewhere out there in your future, in your success, in your image, in your next big decision. But what if meaning isn't something that you pursue? What if it's something that ensues naturally when your life is rooted in something bigger than your ego? So Viktor Frankl was a psychiatrist and a Holocaust survivor and the author of A Man's Search for Meaning. Read that book, it's incredible. And that book, A Man's Search for Meaning, was written after losing his family in concentration camps and witnessing the depths of human suffering. And through all of it, he noticed something really extraordinary. The people most able to endure suffering weren't the ones that were chasing happiness. They were the ones connected to meaning. And not meaning in some grand dramatic sense, like the way that we've been taught, but the kind that shows up when you have a reason to keep going, when you're aligned with something greater than your ego, even in the face of pain. Frankl said that meaning doesn't come from chasing pleasure or avoiding discomfort. It shows up as a byproduct when you live with purpose, even if you can't define it. That's wild to the mind to think like, if I don't define it, then how do I make meaning? And so maybe that's why you're tired, because you've been trying to manufacture clarity or chase happiness like a finish line, instead of letting meaning emerge from how you already live, from what you care about or what you value, even especially when things don't feel certain yet. And so as I was putting this video together, I was also thinking about Carl Jung. He's also another psychoanalyst. And I reference him a lot because if you want to understand shadow work, he goes really deep into it. But anyway, I digress. So Carl Jung, he didn't ask, what should I do with my life? He asked, who am I becoming? So to Jung, purpose wasn't a goal to chase. It was the neutral unfolding of the self. So it's not the version of you shaped by approval, performance, or fear, but the deeper self you've carried all along. And so he believed that each of us is born whole, but along the way, we traded pieces of ourselves for love, safety, belonging. And so the work isn't to become something new, it's to return to what's always been there, just quietly waiting beneath all of the noise. So purpose isn't revealed through achievement. It reveals itself through honesty, being authentic, through stripping back all of the layers, through reclaiming the parts of you that you've silenced to survive. So you don't find purpose by becoming someone else. You find it by unbecoming everything you were never meant to be. So for me, I don't think I was ever intentional with the first half of my life. And honestly, I always say I've lived multiple lives up to this point, not in the way that I imagined, and definitely not in the way that I live now, especially as it relates to that intentionality. You know, I followed the script. I was shaped by the immigrant experience heavily, and that told me that education was really the only path, that success meant stability, that my worth and my family's pride depended on how well I performed. And so I did exactly that, not from a conscious choice, right, but from a sense of duty. And if you're an immigrant, you already know what I'm talking about, especially from the Caribbean. But for a while, part of me believed that was the only way. Like I truly believed that because that's all I saw around me. And so I followed that script to the T. It felt true until it didn't. And so at some point, I realized what I was doing just wasn't enough. There was something missing, and it just wasn't enough on a soul level. And I realized I was living a life that wasn't truly mine. Now, yes, I do believe I'm in the most aligned space that I've ever been in my life. What I do now fits me in a deeply, spiritually and connected way. But I didn't arrive here through clarity. I arrived here through pain. And what I mean by that is my pursuit of purpose in the very beginning, the first half of my life, was rooted in wounding. And so when that structure I built for myself just shattered 6.5 years later, I really didn't know who I was. And I felt like an absolute failure. Like I had, let my family down and the people that I was meant to serve. I felt like I disappointed a lot of people. And it took years for me to reconcile that. And so that's why for me, purpose stopped being about what I was doing and more about who I was becoming. So the more that I aligned with my truth and not my ego, but something deeper and spiritual, the more I noticed something crazy happened. When I stopped trying to chase purpose, it started meeting me where I was. So purpose doesn't mean that you're fixed. Often people are like, once I choose it, this is it. It doesn't mean that once you choose, you can't change. You're allowed to evolve. You're allowed to explore, as long as you're honoring what's real for you, what's true for you. But I'm getting ahead of myself, because we got 3 more videos in this series. So let's just keep going. So what if instead of chasing clarity, you followed aliveness? What if purpose isn't something that you find, but something that you actually feel? Something that lives in the moments that just light you up, not in the plans that weigh you down. What if you started trusting the things you just keep circling back to? The thoughts that linger, the nudges that you've quieted but never quite shaken? Purpose isn't something in the future. It's in the frequency of the now. It doesn't arrive in a grand cinematic moment. It reveals itself in your quiet yeses. It's the time that you maybe helped a friend and felt something click, like your presence had weight. That season when you stopped performing and maybe for the first time in your life, you felt like yourself. Or maybe that idea or nudge you've ignored for years, but it still lives in your body like a thread that you haven't followed yet. That's not coincidence, that's clarity. Trying to get your attention, essentially. Aliveness isn't loud, it's very subtle. But when you learn to follow it, even in the smallest of ways, you start to build a life that's not just successful on the outside, but deeply authentic on the inside. And maybe as you're hearing this, you feel a flicker of something. Maybe some things are starting to connect a little bit. Maybe a moment in your life that did feel like a breadcrumb, a moment that felt real to you, maybe more aligned, like something in you said, yeah, that's it right there. But then almost as quickly, the mind rushes in. You know, the mind says all these types of things. It says maybe, okay, but what does this mean? What does that mean? Where is this going? How do I know if I'm on the right path? There goes that mind. That's not necessarily resistance or even confusion. That's just your very human desire for direction. Of course, you want clarity. Of course, you want to feel like it's working. But let's pause there, because what we're often reaching for in those moments isn't just clarity, it's certainty. And that's a different thing entirely. You see, certainty is about control. It wants a guarantee before you take the leap. It says, don't move until you're sure. Clarity? Clarity is a bit more subtle. It emerges as coherence when your outer choices begin to reflect your inner truth. And that kind of clarity doesn't usually arrive all at once. It reveals itself as you move, moment to moment, bit by bit. Certainty clings. Clarity, it flows. Control chokes. Listening opens. Planning protects. Presence invites. So you don't need to see the whole map. You just need to respond to what's asking for your attention right now. One step, one authentic yes at a time. And that's how the real path actually appears. And if you're in the season where the next step feels uncertain, or you're tired of circling the same questions, there are free resources in the description below to help you reflect, reconnect, and move forward gently. And if you're feeling pulled to go deeper, the next round, the second cohort of the Resistant Reset, is coming soon. It's an 8-week journey to help you move through resistance, rebuild self-trust, and take aligned action from within. You can join the waitlist below if it speaks to you. All right, so let's pause for a moment, not to overanalyze, just to notice some things that might be coming up. If this feels good to you, don't do this if you're driving, but if it feels good, just close your eyes if you're comfortable, or just bring your attention inward and just ask yourself, when was a time I stopped trying to get it right and something meaningful happened anyway? It might have been a moment you didn't think much of it at the time. Maybe it's helping someone without needing recognition, maybe saying no when you usually would have said yes, or simply just being present without performing, without putting on some sort of show or mask. Sometimes meaning doesn't announce itself, but it leaves an imprint, a sense of resonance, and a shift in your body. And if nothing comes to mind, you're like, Francis, I'm trying this. Nothing, I don't see nothing, I don't feel nothing. Try this instead. What's one small moment I keep remembering without knowing why? That's something worth paying attention to. And if you're journaling today, write about that moment, not to analyze or make sense of it. Just stay with it a little longer, see what comes up for you, and what did it show you about yourself? All right, so we're nearing the end. Let's just wrap this up. I want to say to you, there's nothing wrong with where you are now. You're in the season of questioning. And that takes more courage than pretending to have it all figured out. Maybe the reason you haven't found clear answers is because something deeper is unfolding. It's not a quick fix. It's not a perfect plan, but a relationship with your own truth. So instead of forcing some sort of breakthrough, try just getting curious about what's already there. What's already coming up for you? What's been sort of whispering beneath all of the noise? What your body leans towards again and again and again. And that's how purpose begins. Not with certainty, but with one authentic moment at a time. All right, so you'll hear more about the Resistance Reset as this series continues. So if today's episode stirs something in you, there's a link below to explore the next steps. But right now, let's just stay in the moment. Because in the next video, we're not talking about clarity that you have to earn. We're talking about the kind that's already within you. That quiet space, that quiet sense of knowing that's easy to dismiss. The part of you that's always been paying attention, even when the world told you to look elsewhere. Next time, we'll explore how to hear it more clearly without all the noise, and why trusting it might be the real path forward. As always, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And if you found value in this video, it would mean the world to me if you just shared it with somebody, and like and subscribe. And I will see you in part 2 of this video series, The Paradox of Purpose. All right, take care, y'all. And I'll see you on the other side of change.